What's up everyone, in the shop today, and I gotta ask you a serious question. What's your problem? I say that in the most endearing way possible. Woodworkers are incredible problem solvers. So I started thinking, before we start working on the next project, well, we should ask ourselves, what's your problem? A lot of people struggle with miter joints. I understand, I used to be that way too. But I didn't want that to be an excuse for not cutting miters, so what I did was I carved out some time dedicated to solving that problem. First, I did some tune-up work. I set my blade to 45 degrees, cut a piece of scrap wood. Then I tested it to see if it's 45 degrees using a square and then the base of my combination square. You can use your combination square if you are absolutely sure that that is dead on, but I tend to do it this way instead. When that blade is at the perfect setting, then I adjusted my table saw. A lot of table saws have little stop locks or bolts that you can adjust. So now I have a hard stop. Whenever I turn that blade to 45 degrees and it hits that bolt, I know, hey, that's exactly where it needs to be at. Don't turn it anymore. I know that solves the problem of making sure the blade's at the right angle, but I feel like I could do a little bit more. So what I did was I made a dedicated miter joint sled. It is super easy to make one of these with some MDF, some plywood, a T-slot runner, and a few clamps. I went with an adjustable runner, that way I could recalibrate it in the future in case it goes out of alignment. Just drilled a couple oversized holes, made sure my jig was 90 degrees to the blade, and locked that thing down. Over at the router table, I used a dovetail bit, carved a couple grooves in it. This is great because I've got some clamps that will slide right into those things and it'll hold my workpiece down. The jig fence is just a couple pieces of plywood that I glued together, and I screwed them to the bottom of the base plate. I tilted the blade to 45 degrees and now I have a dedicated miter sled that gives me perfectly cut joints every single time. There was a stretch of time where I was making quite a bit of routered bowls and trays and because they look really cool. Well, there is one problem with that. To do that, you gotta move your router around the entire bowl. And that's the whole perimeter of it and then on the inside. And well, if your bowl's too big, the router will fall inside of it. You don't want that to happen. And I don't wanna limit myself to only making bowls out of the size of my router. So I made a new base plate for it. It's just a piece of 1/4 inch thick acrylic. I removed the original base plate, used it as a template, tracing the bolt locations and then the center hole. Drilled some countersunk holes and then made smaller through holes and then drilled a giant hole in the middle for my router bit to fit into. Screw it back onto your router and it's that easy. And you got this giant surface that you can actually see through because it's acrylic, it's clear, and you can route your entire project. Whenever I get a new router, I just go ahead and make one of these for it because they're so handy to have. And I've already taken care of all that stuff. I've dedicated the time to it. And now I can just rock and roll whenever that inspiration hits. Maybe the problem that's bogging you down is something to do with a process. Like you're always finding yourself in the same situation where you have to clamp something that's awkward and it's just maddening. We could try to solve it. For a while there, I had some projects with particle board and plywood that needed hardwood edge banding. And so I cut several rectangles for some scrap hardwood. I drilled a hole at the end of each one of them. Probably like, I don't know, 4/5 of the way down. Not scientific here. At the bandsaw, I cut a kerf down the middle of it until I reached the hole. And then I bumped my fence over a little, cut it again, just to widen that kerf just a bit. Over the table saw on each one of the blocks, I cut a notch wide enough for to fit the bar of my F-clamp. The F-clamp will hold the block into place. Tap a wedge into that kerf, and it applies firm clamping pressure across the entire surface. Why repeatedly deal with the same problem? These are really easy to batch out and quite handy, honestly. Look around your shop. Is there any particular tool that you're like, I love using that tool, but there's that one aspect of it that just drives me mad? Mine was a spindle sander. I love the spindle sander. It is one of my favorite tools. I don't get to use it all the time, but when I do, it's just something peaceful about using the spindle sander that, I really like it. However, long work pieces, medium work pieces, just regular decent size work pieces, they tend to just tip over because all spindle sanders, it seems like, that are in a certain price range all have this weird, funky looking shaped top that is not really conducive to doing any sort of spindle sanding. I got sick of it, so I came up with a solution to fix mine. I took a piece of MDF and I cut a hole right out of the middle of it. I made sure that hole was big enough that it could hold different size drums, because while a spindle sander, you have different size drums you use. Then I took a piece of hardwood and I cut a whole bunch of kerfs in it, just cut all the way down the length, just high enough so that it didn't cut all the way through the workpiece, but it's really, really close. What that allowed me to do is take that piece of oak that I was using and wrap it around that weird, funky shape of the sander. and I put my piece of MDF top right on top of that thing and I glued it together. Now I got a removable top. I can easily take that thing off whenever I'm just doing something small, but if I'm working with a bigger piece, put that top right back on, and look at that. It's adaptable now. That was a major problem, a major pain in the butt for me, and now it's fixed. I know we have family obligations and work schedules, and our shop time is limited. We want to make something, that project, that box, in the most efficient way possible. Sometimes to complete a project faster, well, we need to delay it. Tackle a solution to a problem you often encounter. Then when you do start the project, it'll go smoother and you'll get it done in record time. Until we meet again, get in your shop and build something awesome.